Hello there, and welcome to this short video from the Medal Department commemorating the 205th anniversary of the Battle of Waterloo, coming up on the 18th of June. Obviously, many of you will know the fantastic and celebrated history of the battles before and obviously Waterloo itself, but we thought we'd like to do this short video just to say a few of our favourite stories. And I think I'll just begin with a quick 2-minute introduction, just talking about the importance of the Waterloo Medal. The medal itself actually was announced in the London Gazette in April 1816, so just under a year after the battle, but it was only 10 days after the battle that the House of Commons voted that every man, officer, and members of the King's German Legion who'd served in the battle would be awarded a medal to commemorate that action. That was truly historic because it was the first occasion which everybody of rank and file was awarded a campaign medal. Before then, obviously, officers were awarded, the Army Gold Medal, etc. But it was the first time that every man received a medal. Designed at the Royal Mint by Thomas Wyon, around 39,000 medals were struck, of which around 38,500 were actually finally awarded, each impressed around the rim with the recipient's rank, their name and their unit. So this really starts the precedence of campaign medals being issued, and really it begins the hobby that we all know and love today. Because it's the forebear for all the campaign medals up until the present day. So a really important medal. Obviously, the Allied nations of the Seventh Coalition also issued medals. So it's a nice collection which lots of people take forward, is to collect all 7 medals issued for the battle. But the main one we're focused on is the Waterloo Medal. Over the last few years, we've had the privilege to handle and sell a number of truly important Waterloo medals, and I think Robert is now going to take you on and tell you a few of his favourite stories. So thank you very much.
Hello there. With thanks to Marcus for the kind introduction, you already know that the 18th of June 2020 is the 205th anniversary of the Battle of Waterloo, and it is with great pleasure that I have a few interesting things to show you today. The first thing I will cover is a really most fascinating Waterloo Medal awarded to none other than Lieutenant General the Honourable Sir Charles Colville. Now, those of you with an interest in the Napoleonic Wars will almost certainly have heard of Sir Charles and know a little bit about his career. It is with great delight and indeed privilege that we are able to show you his medal. It's interesting to realise that there were only 6 British Lieutenant Generals involved in the Waterloo campaign, and to see one outside of a museum or private collection is perhaps maybe not once in a lifetime opportunity, but it certainly doesn't happen very often. And as I said, I'm very privileged to be able to show it to you. Now, Sir Charles was a very, very interesting character indeed. He started his military career in the 1790s in the West Indies, went on to serve in a senior role as a battalion commander in Egypt in 1801, spent some time in the Mediterranean, Gibraltar, before moving on to the peninsula. And he fought not entirely through the whole of the Peninsular Wars, but certainly in positions of great responsibility during some very significant and major actions. Probably the most important actions that he was principally involved with were the sieges of Ciudad Rodrigo and Badajoz in late 1811 and early 1812 respectively. These particular sieges were undertaken by the British Army under the future Duke of Wellington to secure the border between Portugal and Spain and allow his forces to, as a staging post, to allow his forces to move from Portugal into Spain to keep driving the French back to France. Now, Sir Charles commanded various divisions and large forces within the British Army during the Peninsula, but he is chiefly remembered for commanding the 4th Division. And it was during particularly the siege of Badajoz that he led it with great fortitude and bravery. In fact, to the extent that he was wounded during the siege and supposedly was hit in the thigh by a musket ball and also lost at least one finger on one of his hands. So to speculate, or indeed to realise that a senior officer was very much in the thick of the fighting at the front of things, even during the notoriously bloody sieges of this period of history, really does give one a new appreciation of what even the general officers were doing, not just the private soldiers. Sir Charles ended his career very highly decorated indeed. So he was knighted, he was awarded the Portuguese Order of the Tower and the Sword, the Order of the Bath, the Guelphic Order, and additionally the Army Gold Cross with one clasp, which equates to being in a senior position or commanding in 5 major actions during the Peninsular War. During the Waterloo campaign, Sir Charles's career perhaps didn't go quite as he may have hoped. He, again, had a senior position, but commanded a division which was on the extreme right flank of Wellington's army. Now, that meant that unfortunately he missed the entire battle. His division, minus 1 brigade, which did actually fight during the battle, was positioned too far away to perform any actions, or indeed to be on the field, on the 18th of June 1815. So one can imagine that Sir Charles was perhaps a little miffed that he had missed out. Because of this, Wellington, after the Battle of Waterloo, gave him the responsibility of leading the Allied army on the invasion of France, with his division spearheading the advance. And it was interesting to note in the course of my research that Sir Charles's division was responsible for storming the fortress of Cambrai, which, despite Napoleon's defeat at Waterloo, was not willing to immediately surrender to the invading Allied forces. Sir Charles commanded the attack with great gallantry and fortitude, as he had reputation for, of course, and ensured that the storming was successful at the loss of only about 20 Allied lives in his division, which I think is a pretty great feat, and so had a very good end to the campaign. After Waterloo, he remained in the Allied army of occupation for several years, then went on to be Commander-in-Chief of the Bombay Army out in India, after which he became Governor of Mauritius, spent a few years in Mauritius, and then retired back to Britain and died in London in the 1830s. And so, as I said, it is a great privilege to be able to share the Waterloo Medal with you of none other than a Lieutenant General. The second medal that I'm going to cover here is not a Waterloo Medal, but was awarded for the Peninsular War. It is the Military General Service Medal, seen here with one clasp for the battles of the Neve in the later stages of the Peninsular War. So why am I talking about the Peninsular War in a piece of footage about Waterloo? Well, the reason being is that the recipient of this medal was entitled to a Waterloo Medal. The recipient was Private Thomas Fowles, or Fowles, of the 1st Foot Guards. Now, this medal has come from a rather fine collection of 19th century medals, the vast majority being to those who fought in the Napoleonic Wars. And rather excitingly, the records of Private Fowles still exist, and he is recorded as not only fighting at Waterloo in the 1st Foot Guards, but in the 3rd Battalion, which, as those of us with an interest in the Napoleonic Wars and the Battle of Waterloo will know, played a very important part in the battle. But even more excitingly than that, Private Fowles was in the light company of the 3rd Battalion 1st Guards, commanded by none other than Lord Salton. And it is again recorded that Fowles was a member of the light company that participated in the defence of the Chateau of Hougoumont. Captain Salton's light company were the part of the original defenders of the Chateau of Hougoumont, and they were initially stationed in the orchard just outside the main walls. The French assault was so heavy that these troops were soon withdrawn into the chateau itself and conducted a defence that lasted all day. Hougoumont was almost a battle within a battle. The French tried multiple times to take the chateau, the reason being that Napoleon felt it was a useful place for consolidating a later assault on Wellington's line. Wellington, of course, knew this as well and ensured that it had to be held, it had to be defended at all costs. Now, Fowles was, as I said, an original member of the defending force, and later on Salton's light company were withdrawn back to the main ridge to rejoin the remainder of the regiment and participated in the final repulse of the French Imperial Guards, Napoleon's last throw of the dice when every other assault had failed against the Allied line. So this medal is very, very exciting indeed, because we have it to a recorded defender of Hougoumont from the first stages of the battle, who we know fought through the whole thing, who then returned to the ridge to witness and participate in the final French assault on the Allied lines. And for a collector of Napoleonic medals, of military general service medals, what could be outwardly considered a fairly plain and dull thing, with one clasp to a later battle in the Peninsular War, is transformed into something really quite exciting. Obviously, Fowles was entitled to a Waterloo medal, so if you know the whereabouts of that medal, or indeed perhaps have it in your collection, you could reunite this with the Waterloo medal, which would be a great thing to do indeed. Now, Fowles's later life is also of interest because he, in retirement, became an outpensioner at the Royal Hospital, Chelsea, and later on recorded as a watchman at Armoury House and the Honourable Artillery Company. He lived on until the 1870s, so was, I believe, about 80 years old by the time he died. And again, another interesting avenue of collecting is that if you collect medals to the Honourable Artillery Company, this is perhaps something you would consider having in your collection. It is going to be for sale in our July auction, so please do keep an eye out for it. It will form part, as I said, of a small but finely formed collection of early 19th century medals, a lot of which are Napoleonic. And do keep an eye on the catalogue when it comes out for the 29th and 30th of July. So, after talking about medals, we move on to a painting. And here we have what I consider a rather stunning full-length portrait watercolour of none other than Major General Sir Denis Pack. Eagle-eyed Spink viewers may notice that this painting has been on our premises for some time, and indeed it formed part of a collection that we sold back in 2003 of the orders, decorations and medals of the aforementioned Sir Denis. These sold for £100,000, but perhaps somewhat happily, for us at least, this painting did not form part of the sale, and so we still get to enjoy it today. Now, I'm talking to you about it because, of course, it is a very fine painting of Sir Denis wearing all his orders, decorations and medals. and I'm going to talk you very briefly through them. We can see here that he is wearing from his neck the Russian Order of St. Vladimir, the Army Gold Cross with no less than 7 clasps. 7 clasps was only ever awarded to one other person, that person being the Commander-in-Chief of the Portuguese forces during the Peninsular War, Marshal William Carr Beresford. And interestingly, the Duke of Wellington is the only person who bettered that with 9 clasps to his Army Gold Cross. The Order of the Bath and the Portuguese Order of the Tower and Sword. We can also see, just poking out from underneath his Waterloo medal, the Austrian Order of Maria Theresa, and then he additionally has the breast stars of the Order of the Bath, the Order of St. Vladimir, and the Order of the Tower and Sword. He is depicted here, of course, in his Major General's full dress uniform at some point immediately after the Battle of Waterloo, at which he received, or after which he received, several of these orders. In the distance you can see Highlanders fighting Frenchmen and indeed defeating them. Sir Dennis Pack commanded a brigade at the Battle of Waterloo, which included 2 Highland regiments, the 92nd, the Gordon Highlanders, and the 42nd, the Black Watch, 2 very famous regiments indeed. And the Highlanders in the background appear to have yellow facings and therefore are the Gordon Highlanders. Now, Sir Dennis was a very interesting character indeed. You'll remember I mentioned the Waterloo Medal to Sir Charles Colville. Well, he and Sir Dennis had very similar careers in a number of respects. They both started off their military lives in the 1790s, whereas Sir Charles went off to the West Indies at the start of his career. Sir Dennis started his in the Low Countries. Sir Dennis, being more highly decorated than Sir Charles, participated in more battles during the Peninsular Wars and in fact also commanded Portuguese forces, much like his companion in arms William Beresford, the other recipient of that Army Gold Cross with 7 clasps. The other interesting thing about Sir Dennis is that he actually took part in the abortive and ultimate failure of a British expedition to South America and had the unfortunate circumstance to be captured, much like, again, his friend Beresford. Now, it is perhaps not evident from this painting, but clear that Sir Dennis was a bit of a character, and perhaps not easy to get on with. He actually had the fortune to escape from prison in South America with Beresford, after which time it is reported that a fellow prisoner wrote on the wall of his jail cell, "The devil break the jailer's back that set him loose, dear Dennis Pack." So perhaps wasn't highly thought of by his fellow prisoners. He seems rather placid in this portrait, of course, and during the Waterloo campaign, his immediate senior officer was another chap with a bit of a temper, the Welsh firebrand Sir Thomas Picton, who of course was killed at the Battle of Waterloo 205 years ago today, and the command developed on the next in line, Sir James Kempt, and which meant that Sir Dennis Pack was second in command of the division. Sir Dennis happily survived the Battle of Waterloo, but didn't live a terribly long time after the battle, and went on after in retirement to various senior military posts, sort of governorships and things like that, as was traditional for senior officers at the time. And this portrait is definitely a favourite of mine. I often admire it as I'm walking around the office on a daily basis. Much like the Waterloo Medal awarded to Sir Charles Colville, it is not coming up for sale in July, I'm afraid, for those of you who may have been getting very excited, but you'll still be able to enjoy it and look at it when you come into our offices. So I hope you've enjoyed listening to me talking a little bit about some Waterloo heroes and showing you a few interesting bits and pieces that we have. The Military General Service Medal, as I said, to Private Fowles or Fowles of the 1st Foot Guards is coming up for sale in our July Orders, Decorations and Medals auction. And if you have any questions, please let us know. We look forward to seeing you on the 29th and the 30th of July. Thank you very much.